promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Porto Novo. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. About 140 people confirmed dead following a fatal fuel tanker explosion in Nigeria.
That I was prepared to take the political risk involved in coming to grips with this problem. Today, he said that no.
Some of them that engaged in fetching this fuel were caught off with the fire. In the process of taking, there is a flash of light and the place caught fire.
Mali's junta leader, Colonel Goita, promoted to a 5-star general, the highest rank in the country. Ghana's President Akufo-Addo criticizes NDC flag bearer Mahama over double stance in Galamsey crisis.
That I was prepared to take the political risk involved in coming to grips with this problem. Today, he said that no, he doesn't believe in jailing, that he's against Galamsey, that he will enforce the law. So once again, we have to ask ourselves, Mr. JM, where do you stand?
And Liberia's PAC discovers key findings in General Auditing Committee. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is a more edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. We'll begin this bulletin in Mali, where Colonel Simi Goita has been promoted to the rank of Army General, making him the highest ranking officer in the Malian army as of today. The other colonels with whom he carried out the coup in April 2022 have also been promoted to Army Corps Generals. This decision has sparked strong reactions among the Malian public opinion. Details in this report by Liu Cham in Bamako and voiced by Echa Tiso.
At the Council of Ministers on Wednesday, the transitional president, Colonel Assimi Goita, was exceptionally promoted to the rank of Army General. He has now become the highest-ranking officer in the Malian Army with 5 stars. The other Army colonels with whom he overthrew the late former president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, were exceptionally promoted to the rank of Army Corps Generals. They are Sadio Kamara, Minister of Defense, Malik Diaw, President of the Transitional Parliament, Ismail Wage, Minister of National Reconciliation, and Modibo Kone, Director of State Security. Furthermore, government spokesman and Minister of Territorial Administration, Abdoulaye Maiga, was also promoted to the same rank. This is a promotion the Collective for the Defense of the Military, a civil society movement supporting the military, is delighted about. But within the political class, the decision is viewed in different ways, with some people kicking against it. In a post on Facebook, former Prime Minister Musa Mara said he was saddened by the decision. As a reminder, this promotion of the military in power to the rank of general is one of the recommendations of the Inter-Malian dialogue held last May.
That was a report by our Bamako correspondent, Ali Chaman, voiced by Eche Atisu. In gaining, the prosecutor of the Court for the Repression of Economic and Financial Crimes on Wednesday requested 4 years of imprisonment against the former president of the National Assembly under the Alpha Condé regime. The lawyers for the civil party requested the payment of 12 billion Guinean francs, about $1.38 million as principal, and 20 billion Guinean francs, about $2.3 million equivalent, as damages. The prosecution argued that there is no doubt that Damaro Kamara is guilty of the acts and fact of embezzlement of public funds, illicit enrichment, money laundering, and corruption in the public and private sectors. The prosecutor also requested 5 years in prison for Michel Kamano, former Questor of Parliament, and the payment of a fine of $578,000. It further requested that an arrest warrant be issued against a former MP who is outside the country for health reasons. Now to some devastating news from Nigeria, where mass burial has been held for 140 victims of a petrol tanker explosion in Majuwa town in the Jigawa State northeastern region. The tragedy occurred when the driver lost control of the vehicle, following which resident attempted to scoop fuel from the overturned tanker, triggering the blast. Usman Warren Abuja tells us more.
Among the early callers at the scene of the incident were officials from the National Emergency Management Agency in the region. Noura Abdullahi, head of the agency in the state, provides an account of the incident.
So some of them that engaged in fetching this fuel were caught up with the fire. In the process of taking, there is a flash of light and the place caught fire. we right now that we recorded about the death of 107 people. Almost 50 are in the hospital receiving attention. What we do first is to evacuate those that are alive. They were evacuated to the hospitals. Those that have died, we are preparing them now for a mass burial.
Accidents like these, where residents attempt to scoop petrol from fallen tankers and get caught in the fire, are common in parts of Nigeria. The federal government has ordered an investigation, with the Nigerian Senate, alongside the Minister of Petroleum Resources, urging Nigerians to avoid approaching accident scenes involving petroleum products. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Omar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, reactions have continued to trail the tanker accident explosion. Now, the accident, one of many such incidents in the country, highlights the dangerous reality faced by residents grappling with rising fuel prices and poor infrastructure. Desperate to gather fuel, locals took a fatal risk as they approached the overturned tanker. Social commentators like Jidojo noted that since the Nigerian government ended fuel subsidies last year, the cost of fuel has tripled, pushing many into situations where scavenging becomes a dangerous necessity. It blames weak enforcement of traffic and safety regulations, along with poorly maintained fuel tankers that are prone to spillage during accidents.
The laws are very clear. There are so many provisions in our laws that guides roadworthiness and road traffic, the speed limit for articulated vehicles and all of that. So I think law enforcement agents have their own faults. Government in itself has its own fault in terms of not properly maintaining our highways. Our roads are in very poor shapes. Many of them have potholes and gullies, and they are not really something that people should ordinarily ply with their vehicles.
We do have a longer version of that interview much later in the news.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We cross over to Ghana, where President Nana Akufo-Addo has hit hard at former president and flag bearer of the opposition NDC, John Mahama, to share his clear and concise plans to fight illegal mining activities, also known as galamsey, in the country. Speaking in the Savannah region of the country to a party faithful, President Akufo-Addo shared the risk associated with fighting galamsey as losing elections and parliamentary seats in mining areas. The president also criticized Mr. Mahama of double stands in the fight against galamsey. They are affecting the national development.
The same way, this galamsey matter, which has risen a lot in Ghana today. In the last election in the mining districts of the country, the MPP did very badly, largely because the NDC presidential candidate and the party had gone around the mining areas and saying that the policy that I was implementing of trying to stop galamsey would be reversed when he came to power, and that those who were already in jail for offenses, the galamsey offenses, all of them would be amnestied. When I said I was putting my presidency on the line, that's what I meant, that I was prepared to take the political risk involved in trying to deal with this galamsey phenomenon. The result, of course, was that the mining districts, especially in the western region, all of them, including almost nearly even Dakar, was lost to the MPP. That is what I meant when I said I'm putting my presidency on the line, that I was prepared to take the political risk involved in coming to grips with this problem. Today, he said that no, he doesn't believe in jailing, that he's against galamsey, that he will enforce the law. So once again, we have to ask ourselves, Mr. J.M., where do you stand? What are you telling the people of Ghana? Because every time you speak from one corner of your mouth and you speak from another corner of your mouth.
Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo speaking there. In the Gambia, the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions, NANRI, and the Pan-African Parliament on Wednesday concluded a 4-day forum in Banjul focused on advancing human rights across the continent. The event brought together representatives from various human rights institutions and other relevant stakeholders to engage in critical discussions on policies and frameworks aimed at enhancing human rights protection in Africa. Sankli Janko reports.
Participants highlighted the need for collaborative efforts to address pressing human rights challenges, including issues related to governance, justice, and social equity. Key topics included the role of national institutions in monitoring human rights violations, the importance of community engagement, and strategies for fostering accountability within governments. Patricia Nasu Ndanema is the chairperson of the Sierra Leone Human Rights Commission.
By working together with PAP, I am optimistic that their interventions can further enhance our effectiveness in promoting human rights, justice, peace, and security across the African continent. I also note the presentations on the SDGs and the Agenda 2063 in general, but specifically zooming on SDG 16 and Goal 11 of the Agenda 2016. I zoomed them up because both goals are crucial to the sustenance of peace and stability in the African continent.
Meanwhile, the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia, Emmanuel Dijuve, emphasized the critical role of NAMRIS and PAP in the protection of human rights.
Prevention of torture. You look at our continent, what is happening, institutional reforms, legislative reforms. These are the issues that what this has done, it created a platform for us to come together. We are going to make sure the recommendations that we talked about here will be implemented. The recommendations are fine, but we need to make sure that things that are said here are implemented, and we will do it.
The Banjul Forum underscored the commitment of African countries to uphold human rights and foster a culture of accountability, marking a significant step towards a more just and equitable society across the continent. For Newslink and West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sankula Jangu reporting from Banjul.
The International Monetary Fund, IMF, on Wednesday said a team had visited Senegal to start assessing the implications of data revisions resulting from a government audit of past and current IMF-supported programs. While the certification of the government's findings is pending, IMF staff will continue to work closely with the authorities in the coming weeks to evaluate the macroeconomic impact and outline the next steps, according to the fund. An audit of Senegal's finances ordered by a newly elected president, Bashir Diomaye Faye, showed last month that the deficit at the end of 2023 stood at over 10% of GDP, compared with around 5% the previous government had reported. As a result, the government said it had decided not to go ahead with Senegal's request for an IMF disbursement in July following the fund's review in June. Senegal has since been in discussion with the IMF to take corrective measures. An IMF staff team conducted a mission to Senegal from October 9 to October 16 to discuss the audit's preliminary findings. The statement added that the next step will include assessing whether any misreporting occurred during previous and current IMF-supported programs. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. About 140 people confirmed dead following a fatal fuel tanker explosion in Nigeria. While its junta leader Colonel Goita promoted to a 5-star general, the highest rank in the country. Ghana's President Akufo-Addo criticizes NDC flag bearer Mahama over double stance in the Galamsey crisis. And still ahead in the news, Liberia's PAC discovers key findings in General Auditing Committee. We do have the press review, a guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org. Now let's take you to the Sahel region, as many Malian teachers doubt that classes will resume in all areas of the country, as some schools are still occupied by people affected by the floods. Several classrooms have been destroyed by the waters and others are seriously damaged. Details from Abubakar, voiced by Augustine Colley.
Following a meeting held by Prime Minister Shogel Maigai and the Minister of National Education, the Interministerial Committee for Crisis and Disaster Management has confirmed that the school reopening will take place on November 4. The Minister of National Education, Amadou C. Savani, presented a detailed report on the condition of schools affected by the floods, which are currently serving as shelters for displaced persons. Several schools, particularly the damaged classrooms, need to be rehabilitated after the flooding. The Minister of National Education has also sought the support of the Ministry of Territorial Administration to instruct regional governors to evacuate schools occupied by flood victims. For those still occupied by the scheduled reopening date, the government assures that its partner UNICEF will be ready to set up temporary shelters to serve as provisional classrooms. In response to the increasing impacts of climate change, which have severely affected Mali in 2024, the government is considering digitizing educational content and facilitating distance learning. This initiative will cost the Malian state 600 million CFA francs, approximately $970,800. As a reminder, the country declared a national disaster a few months ago following floods that resulted in nearly 200 deaths, thousands of people displaced, and significant material damage.
Augustine Curley voiced that report as filed in by Afa Bobakar. Now, Ivorian authorities are preparing to launch a national vaccination campaign from October 18 to 24. This campaign primarily targets children. As of last February, Côte d'Ivoire had over 4,400 confirmed cases of measles. Health authorities are urging the population to mobilize for the success of this vaccination campaign against measles and rubella. Christopher Teacher provides more details in this report based on notes from our correspondent in Abidjan, Alben Ade.
Throughout next week, nearly 7 million children aged 9 months to 5 years will be vaccinated against measles and rubella in the 113 health districts of Côte d'Ivoire. Health authorities aim to quickly strengthen children's immunity against these two diseases. Dr. Soro Kotela, the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Ivorian Minister of Health, stated
67% of confirmed measles cases are among children aged between 1 and 9 years, with 87% of these children either unvaccinated or having an unknown vaccination status. This situation underscores the importance of the 7 additional vaccination activities.
For the success of the national vaccination campaign, health authorities hope to rely on the mobilization of the population, especially the parents of the children concerned. Dr. Soro Kotela, the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Ivorian Minister of Health, explains further.
This is a call on all parents and guardians to vaccinate their children against measles and rubella. Vaccination is an act of protection and prevention that saves lives.
As a reminder, measles and rubella are highly contagious infectious diseases that are mainly transmitted through the air and can lead to serious complications.
That was Christopher Teacher with details shared by Alben Ade in Abidjan. Now, the Public Accounts Committee of the Liberian Legislature has discovered key findings within the General Auditing Committee report from 2016 to June 30, 2018. Among the findings are deficiencies in financial management and oversight within the National Transit Authority. Here is Grace Joshua in Monrovia with the rest of the report.
The Legislative Public Accounts Committee held a public hearing on a report from the General Auditing Commission identifying a lack of evidence for payment of $69,121 Liberian dollars, about $4.3 million related to employees' contribution to NASCOP. During a hearing, several senior officials of the National Transit Authority expressed ignorance of the audit report's findings, claiming that their former boss has kept the information confidential.
When the audit was conducted, the Auditor General submitted a copy of the report to the NTA to the offices of the Managing Director. For this provision, we did not receive copy of the report.
The audit revealed that the National Transit Authority management operated with about USD 3.6 million without submitting required quarterly budget performance report. Furthermore, it noted inadequate supervision of daily attendance log, leading to personnel being processed for payroll without proper verification against attendance record.
We cannot carry this kind of attitude in public offices. We leave from there and we cannot. If I were to hear that my name is mentioned in an audit report, 3 months I come and say I did not see a copy, it is far from the truth.
Furthermore, the MTA management reportedly disbursed $450,966 Liberian dollars, about $28,000 directly from bus intake without employing a voucher system. Additionally, the GSC audit pointed out that there were no stocks reported from July 1, 2016 to June 30, 2017, and a lack of evidence for a strategic and operational plan to guide the authority towards measurable goals. The audit claimed that no document risk management policy was established to address internal and external risks that could impel the authority objective. For West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Grace Joshua in Monrovia.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
When I'm joined now, Diditete in Accra for the newspaper review.
We'll start off with the Daily Graphic front page. Abysmal Black Stars need rescue after 42 years trophy drought. Also here, Obuasi Sectec wins 2024 STEM Innovation Contest. Tame greed and stop galamsey. Central Regional Minister says so. And multi-pronged strategy required to address declining oil production. That's according to the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. And that will be it for the Daily Graphic newspaper. To the Ghanaian Times newspaper front page, exploration of resources. Ghana's crude oil production dips, PIAC observes and calls for urgent attention. Also on the front page, Supreme Court to hear Parliament's anti-LGBTQ plus case today, and Togbe Jekle as vice. The final story on the front page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, FAO and EU roll out food security interventions in northern Ghana. And that'll be it for the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Now to the Chronicle newspaper front page, thumbs up for Frema Osei Opare as market traders hail her philanthropic gestures. Another story here, Michael Quay faults attempts to remove MPs from Parliament, and Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin to decide fate of 4 MPs today. Now to the Daily Post newspaper front page, NPP's double standards exposed in North Dai as party expels youth organizer over support for NDC. Other stories here, Doomsor crisis looms as Sonan Asogli suspends operations in Ghana over ECG and government debt payments. And the final story, Ghana's cocoa exports set to crash below $2 billion this year, and it's the lowest in 14 years. That will be it for what the dailies are reporting today. It's back to you.
Many thanks, Nada in Accra with a newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our focus is on the tanker accident in Nigeria, as many such incidents in the country highlights the dangerous reality faced by residents grappling with rising fuel prices and poor infrastructure. Desperate to gather fuel, locals took a fatal risk as they approached the overturned tanker. Social commentator Jide Ojo in this interview speaks on the way forward to prevent reoccurrences.
The problem is basically lack of enforcement. The law is very clear. For instance, there are way bridges that tells you you cannot carry more than certain capacity on certain roads. Let's even not talk in context of inflammable products. There are so many articulated vehicles plying our roads. You see the way they load those trucks that they end up carrying more than twice the approved limit for such trucks. And when this happens, it's a disaster, it's a recipe for disaster. Now, about inflammable products, I think the Road Safety Corps have the mandate to enforce that these tanker drivers are in very good shape, they are roadworthy, and that they do not speed beyond the limit approved for such vehicles. But I think this is where the law enforcement agents are complicit. When they see such articulated vehicles speeding, overspeeding, or not in proper shape in terms of roadworthiness, they are supposed to impound those vehicles. But the moment there is an attempt to impound that, you could see that the owners of these tankers may end up protesting that they will withdraw their services if their tankers are not released, or that their tankers are roadworthy. But I think it has to do with law enforcement. The laws are very clear. There are so many provisions in our laws that guides roadworthiness and road traffic, the speed limit for articulated vehicles, and all of that. So I think law enforcement agents have their own fault. Government in itself has its own fault in terms of not properly maintaining our highways. Our roads are in very poor shapes. Many of them have potholes and gullies, and they are not really something that people should ordinarily ply with their vehicles.
What do you think will be responsible for the high number of deaths?
It speaks to the state of the economy and state of the nation that people will risk their lives just because they want to take advantage of a misfortune. And as I've said earlier on, there is not enough public enlightenment to tell people what they should do in the event of things like this. Even in time past, there have been incidents where there is a leakage on the pipelines, or, maybe a pipeline is breached and inflammable products are gushing out of such. Instead of people running away from such environment, they move towards it to start scooping. And that has led to conflagrations where many lives were lost.
Now, President Bola Tinubu called for a comprehensive review of fuel transportation safety protocols across Nigeria following this tanker explosion in Jikawa. What do you make of the president's statement towards the situation?
Well, it's a welcome development, but I'm not too sure whether that solves the problem in the real sense of it, because all this call for this, call for that. In time past, we have noticed that these have not really been observed, or they are observed in breach. So while it is a welcome development, I think more law enforcement should be done rather than just reviewing regulations and all of that. The extant ones have been observed in breach, but nonetheless, it's a welcome development on the part of the president.
Jido Joy, a public affairs analyst, speaking there. And there is sport with Sankle Janko.
Hello out there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Maitema Togar, has denied ever making an apology to his Libyan counterpart over an ill treatment that the Libyans allegedly inflicted on members of the Nigeria football team who had arrived in Libya on Sunday for a scheduled Africa Cup of Nations match on Tuesday. Apart from dangerously adverting already descending Nigerian aircraft to a different airport from the intended one, the Nigerian team was held hostage without the necessity of life for 16 grueling hours, according to Sports Squire Village. But in a twist, Tripoli-based Libyan Observer published that the Nigerian Foreign Affairs Minister Toga had apologized for the action of the Super Eagles not to honor the scheduled match. However, in a press statement signed by Al-Qasimi Abdul Qadir, a special assistant on media and communication strategy to the minister, Togar denied ever making any apology. Rather, the Libyan Observer report is an erroneous one and planned to gain political leverage and cause dissatisfaction amongst continental football administrators and fans, the statement via Sports Squire Village reports. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudaju for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship environment program, Enviroscope. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to